Okay. Wow. Wow. Well, we're coming to the end of the day. We've got the wonderful Dawn Henderson. I'll read her bio in a moment. Then we're going to have 15 minutes of Q&A with the speakers, which will be fun, hopefully. And then lovely Henk, Archdruid, that's going to soon be Archdruid, will give us a closing ceremony and something to go away and think about. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Dawn is a great storyteller like Robert Temple, who doesn't need a PowerPoint, they just speak so eloquently. Now, this is Dawn, D.K. Henderson, was guided to write a series of novels based on information she had received soon after the crystal skulls burst into her life in the summer of 2011. The author of the Skull Chronicles series of novels, Lost Legacy, was her first book in the series. More books followed, the latest of which, book 6, was published in the late spring of this year, 2022. In addition, she has written 2 short Starspeak volumes. They are great. Starspeak volumes of messages for the people of Earth, Forgotten Wings and Heel Led, channeled from both the crystal skulls and the star races. This is Dawn Henderson.
Hi. Just let me check with Mr. Soundman at the back. Am I loud enough? I got a double thumbs up, that's great. Wow, I feel very honoured to be speaking here today in such exalted company. Professor Temple, Peter, Chris, and Daniel, I mean, what amazing speakers. So I am very, very grateful to be here, very honoured to be here. And also to be able to share my story of the crystal skulls with you. And also, I have to say, to be flying the flag for the Divine Feminine.
Yes.
In amongst all our wonderful Divine Masculine speakers that we've heard today. So I'll go on to talk a little bit about my story and what I understand about the crystal skulls, how they came into my life, what they mean for us. But first, I want you to take yourselves back 250,000 years. Take yourselves back 250,000 cycles of the Earth around the sun, when the first humans were just beginning to emerge and spread across the land masses of this beautiful planet. The night sky above them was very different to the one we know today. Billions and billions of pinpricks of incandescent light against that velvet black backdrop. There was no smog, there were no noxious airborne particles to hide that brilliance. There was no light pollution. So can you just imagine what that must have looked like? The constellations were very different. Some of the ones we know today weren't there, and there were others there that we no longer see. And when those first wanderers looked up at that sky, did they think that they were alone? And yet, far out in the galaxy, across the galaxy and from far beyond, there was a plan afoot. Evolved races, highly evolved, benevolent races, had come together, seeing the potential of the human race, the very young human race, knowing what it could be, what we could be. And they set a plan in motion to help us, to guide us, to lead us through our innate self-destructive tendencies, which, let's face it, we're showing only too well at the moment. So each of 12 star races created a sacred artifact, a powerful sacred artifact, and they imbued it with all the intelligence and knowledge and wisdom that they had, each one relating to each of the 12 races. And into that artifact, they bestowed a consciousness. These artifacts were conscious beings. And then the 12 got together and they created a 13th, all together. They all contributed. And this 13th artifact was the most powerful of the lot. In my books, I call it the Master. I'm sure there are other names for it. And this Master would be an energy hub, a power portal for the 12 when they were brought together. And then they brought them to Earth. And they spread them out across Earth's land masses. Now, those ancient wanderers, those first humans, did they run in terror at these huge silver monsters that appeared in the sky overhead? Did they hide at the roars of these monsters as they filled the air and shook the ground? Did they gaze in wonder and horror and astonishment at such strange and alien creatures that came out of the belly, walking alive out of the belly of these monsters? And is this why so many of our ancient cultures, whether long gone or whether they still exist today, speak of gods coming from the sky? Okay, now this is the story that the crystal skulls gave to me back in 2011 and ever since, about the 13 crystal skulls, for those were the artefacts that they were created and brought to Earth. And I'm going to go into that a little bit later. But first, it's been a long day. You've been PowerPointed out, and it's been amazing talks. I've absolutely been blown away by the talk, absolutely fascinating. But why, after so many hours, are you going to sit and listen to me talk about crystal skulls? Who am I to talk about them? And the answer is, actually, I don't know a lot about crystal skulls. I've not done a lot of research into what other people say about crystal skulls. I only know my own journey with the crystal skulls. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, because at the end of the day, all I can speak of with any honesty is my own experience. It's my truth. It's what I have experienced with the skulls. It's the understandings that I have had from the skulls. It's the truth that the skulls have brought me. Anything else is somebody else's truth and somebody else's experience. And it may conflict. It very often does. And that's okay too, because in this world where we're living in, where nothing is quite what it seems, contradiction, conflict, different stories is absolutely fine. We all have our own understandings. The crystal skulls interact with all of us in different ways and bring us what we need to know, what we need to understand, based on our own perceptions, okay? And whether that's perceptions of what we've read that other people have said, that's perceptions of our own spiritual understandings, or it's what we need to know from the skulls. I'm an author. I've written the Skull Chronicles, which is the reason I'm here today. But I've also been working in the spiritual field, the energy field, for over 25 years, as a healer, as a spiritual mentor, and as a channel, which has only come more recently and was a bit of a surprise to me. But there we go, that's what the skulls decided. So my first book was published in 2010, and it was a non-fiction, grandiosely called by the publishers A Handbook to Spiritual Growth and Personal Transformation, called Forgotten Wings. And I was all set to be writing a follow-up to it when the crystal skulls had other ideas. But before I get into that, what are crystal skulls? Now, I know I've spoken to a few of you, and you've given me the information that you're fascinated by skulls, you've been working with skulls for a long time, whatever, but how many of you have actually interacted with crystal skulls in this room here? Excellent. Good. Okay, but bear with me, please, if what I say to you perhaps says things that you already know, because for people who are not interacting with the crystal skulls, it might be very, it's new knowledge. So the crystal skulls, what are they? Well, they are skulls made of crystal. That goes without saying, except they don't just have to be crystal. Most people, when they think of crystal skulls, think of the clear quartz. As you can see from my friend here, who's come to back me up today, they don't have to be clear quartz. They can be of any mineral that can be carved, basically. You get them in all sizes, from the tiniest, and I've got little ones, no bigger than my thumbnail, and beyond. I mean, I was in Sedona 10 years ago, and there were at least a couple of skulls that I saw that were good this size. For me, they are agents for transformation in whatever way is valid for the people they work with. They have been around for thousands of years, some of them. The original skulls, which are the ones that I talk about in my books and the information that has come through to me, have been around for a heck of a lot longer than that. As I said in the little story I shared with you at the beginning, 250,000 years, 250,000 years. But the majority of the skulls around today are either ancient, which means that they are in the thousands of years old, possibly dating back to Atlantis and maybe Lemuria. I don't know. Lemuria is not on my radar, although I do a lot of work with Atlantis. They're old, which means it's usually sort of a few hundred years, or they're modern. And if any of you have been into crystal shops, if you've been into the hen shop, into the skull room, you will see that crystal skulls are everywhere. I rarely go anywhere. I walk into a shop and there's a crystal skull, or I talk to people and they bring one out of their pocket. They are everywhere, and there's a reason for that. So I have a whole load of crib notes here about what I'm going to talk about today, except I might not. Because when I start talking about this, these guys usually have their own agenda. So actually, I have no real idea what's going to come out of my mouth this afternoon, okay? So bear with me on that one. And if I sort of hesitate or stutter, it's because I'm waiting for something to come through. So my journey with the skulls started in 2011. Before that, I had nothing to do with them. I did not want to didn't want anything to do with them. Like a lot of people I have discovered who have had crystal skulls come into their lives, initially really not wanting to know. They were things of Hollywood movies. They were death and the church and hell and damnation and all the nasty things you can possibly think of. So I wasn't interested, didn't look up. I was running a crystal shop at the time online, and I'd been to the wholesalers and I'd seen one or two. And back in 2011, that's all there was, one or two on the shelves, not many. And I'd left them. I thought, I'm not selling those things. So it was a bit of a surprise when suddenly they said, we're here, you. And when Maria introduced me as the crystal skulls burst into my life, they hijacked it, basically. I do have a choice. I did have a choice. We always have a choice. But they came on so full on that I thought, okay, I have got to run with this. So the story goes that back in the summer of 2011, I met a lovely lady called Sue Coulson, who some of you know. She is amazing. She's also my birthday twin. We have our birthdays on the same day, not the same year, but the same day. And I'd met Sue through a spiritual development group I was going to at the time. And we discovered our birthdays were on the same day and that they were coming up. So this must have probably been early to mid-June 2011. And she said, look, I've been working at Avebury with the energies for several years now. Let's go to Avebury for the day. walk around the stones, and just get to know each other a bit better. Fabulous. Yes, please. Great. So here we trotted, parked up, had a lovely wander around the stones, talking about all sorts of things, spiritual, metaphysical, you name it, and discovered our joint love of crystals. And at the end of the day, Sue said to me, I run workshops where I do huge crystal grids, I mean literally the size, the width of this room. Let me do a crystal grid for you. Come and have a meditation and I'll take you on a journey. That'll be fun. I thought, yeah, it will be fun. Lovely. Who would turn that down? So only a couple of days later, off I trotted, walked into this beautifully calm, peaceful room, couch in the middle, crystals, selenite, and you name it, everywhere. And she said, well, I hope you don't mind, but I brought Tony. Have you met Tony? Tony is a beautiful zebra stone skull, but so big. And even though I didn't like crystal skulls, this thing was so beautiful, white and black stripes with gold in it. She said, you know, are you okay if Tony sits in on this journey? Yeah, why not? Okay, you know. But yeah, as long as he's, you know, doesn't do anything weird. So, lying on this couch, being taken off on this meditation journey, and it was beautiful, and I was floating up amongst the stars and the, you know, the peaceful sky, and it was black, and it was wonderful. And the next thing I realized, or I knew, I was sitting on the outside of a spaceship. And I was talking to these very tall, very blonde-haired, blue-eyed beings. I did not have a clue who they were. The star beings were another thing that was completely off my radar at the time. Anyway, Sue is getting very excited. She said, you're meeting the Pleiadians, you're talking with the Pleiadians. And so we spent half an hour with her talking through me to the Pleiadians, talking back through me to Sue. So when I came back, she was, we've got to do this again. So from that point, every Monday afternoon, because I wasn't working at the time, we'd spent a good couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, taking each other on meditation journeys. And within a couple of weeks, I had this crystal skull turn up in my meditation journey. What the heck was that doing there? Tony was with us, so I was blaming Tony. But the information, the things that I was getting through from it, it was showing me images. Sometimes they were just like snapshots. Sometimes it was like watching a video. And the energy that was coming through, that I was feeling while I was in this meditation, I couldn't deny it. And yet I still didn't really twig what was going on, that the crystal skulls were saying, hey, you know, come on, we want to play. And then I went to a talk by a lady called Patricia Corey. I don't know if you have heard of Patricia Corey. It wasn't to do with crystal skulls. It was all to do with dolphins and whales and whatever. Fabulous talk. And as a result of that, I thought, well, I'll have a look at one of her books. Nothing to do with crystal skulls, until I landed on the chapter about crystal skulls. Okay, so that's when I started thinking there's a little bit more going on here than I perhaps want to admit. So I started opening up a little bit to the crystal skulls and thinking, okay, you want to play, let's see what you want. So bearing in mind that this was the beginning of July, beginning to mid-July, and the skulls were still coming through on my weekly meditations, still bringing me information. They were also answering questions for Sue based on her interest, which I had no idea. Whatever I was telling her, it made no sense to me at all. It was quite technical. It was all to do with frequencies and vibrations and things like that. It didn't mean a thing to me. But I was also getting a lot of images and information and what I can only call video clips coming through. And this was going on until beginning of August, so only about 6 weeks after the whole thing started. I woke up one morning, middle of the week, I think it was a Wednesday, with such a strong message running in my head. You have to write a book about crystal skulls. I don't know anything about crystal skulls. Write a book about crystal skulls. Oh, and by the way, can you make it fiction, please? Because, you know, that way you'll get a bigger audience. Okay, right, I better go and do some research. So I didn't even cross my mind to say no. No, we don't want you to do any research. What do you mean you don't? Well, I don't know anything about crystal skulls. We will tell you all you want to know. We don't want you being influenced by what anybody else has said or felt or experienced working with crystal skulls. And so I didn't. I started writing Lost Legacy in August 2011. Like as I say, I wasn't working at the time. I published it in April 2012. Now, if somebody had told me in April 2011 that I could even write fiction, I would have laughed them off the face of the planet. But there I was, and the interesting thing was, of course, I get part way through, so we get to about September, October time, and I'm a bit slow sometimes, okay? The penny drops. I'm writing a book about 2 of the crystal skulls. Great. There are 13. Okay. That means there's quite a lot more books to write after this one. Oh, crap, basically. So that's where it started. Sue and I continued to work together for at least 2 years, and over that time I had so much more information coming through. So that, you know, a lot of that information I'm still using today. One of the first skulls that came through to me with some information was a clear quartz skull. Bearing in mind this is 10, 11 years ago now. And I only actually wrote the book with the information on the clear quartz skull. Started it about 2 years ago. It was published on summer solstice this year. It was my latest book. So I really get pushed as to what I need to write about. So that's my story, and it's still going on. I'm still writing. Like I say, book 6 was published in summer solstice this year. Book 7 is slowly getting underway, but there's still a lot more to come. I've got some of the information I don't have. So what have the skulls told me? What is this story of the 13 original skulls? Oh, hang on, my little adolescent tag. They don't want you to run away, that's what it is. What is the story that they're telling me? Well, I spoke about some of it when I told you that little story at the beginning. The 13 original skulls, they are off-world skulls. They were brought to us by these benevolent races of beings a very long time ago to watch over us and guide us. They tell me that at various points in our history, various of the skulls have been in the presence of human. So they've spent time in villages, in tribes, in clans, in cultures. But it's never been for thousands of years, let's put it that way. It's only ever been for fairly short periods of time. They came together in Atlantis. That was the first time that the 13 skulls had been united since they arrived on the planet. And they spent a long time in the Pyramid Temple of Atlantis, helping the Atlanteans to evolve into the society that they were. Now, my understanding of Atlantis, again, differs from many of the other understandings of Atlantis, and that too is fine. By me, that's fine. We all have our own truths on certain things, and I can only speak from my experience. But they were together in Atlantis, and then when the darkness came upon Atlantis, they were told, or the priests were told in the temple, that they had to take the skulls away. They had to save them. They had to take them to the four corners of the earth and put them somewhere where they couldn't be found, because if the dark forces of Atlantis got their hands on the skulls, all hell would break loose, and it wouldn't just be the Atlantis that would suffer, it would be Earth, and we would suffer for a very long time. So these skulls were taken away, they were hidden, and this is where I have done a bit of research coming up to this presentation, I have to say that. And I've read stories that some of these skulls have been found, they're in private collections, here, there, and lots of different tales. The skulls tell me they haven't been found. None of the original skulls have been found. There are ancient skulls out there, there are Atlantean skulls out there, there's no doubt about it. Mitchell Hedges, I believe, is an Atlantean skull. But they are telling me categorically, every time I ask, that none of these skulls have been found, and they will not be found until we are ready to welcome them. Because can you imagine, look at where we are. Can you imagine what would happen if 12, 13 powerful artefacts, as powerful, because they've all got their own consciousness, they've all got so much information, appeared in the midst of the world that we're in today? You'd have governments either fighting for them or trying to destroy them. You'd have people running in fear because, not everybody is as enlightened as you lot. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of people out there, there's something new, something different, it's threatening, and, they're going to try and destroy it or hide from it. So they haven't been found, but the time is approaching where they will. What are we doing for time? It's interesting that a lot of ancient cultures talk about crystal skulls. They are a global phenomenon. Despite what you might read about, it's just South America, it's not just South America. Crystal skulls have been found in Mongolia, and I had the pleasure of meeting Heartstar with Elizabeth Keller when I was in Sedona in 2012. I took 6 weeks and did a solo road trip in Arizona, and it was fabulous. And I had the pleasure of meeting Elizabeth Keller in Heartstar. Now, Heartstar is one of a small group of very old Mongolian skulls that were discovered in a cave in Mongolia. The American Indians and the North American Indians speak of crystal skulls. The South Americans, Aztecs, Mayans, that's where most of the tales and stories of crystal skulls, that's where most of the well-known crystal skulls have come from. So if you think Synergy, if you think Einstein, if you think Shannara, and Mitchell Hedges as well. Mitchell Hedges was found in Belize, if the stories are to be told. There is what do they call it? Excuse me a minute, I'm just checking some notes here. Just want to get this right. There is a skull god temple in India where legend has a crystal skull lived for centuries before it was stolen. There have been crystal skulls in Tibet. So they are a worldwide phenomenon. It's not just South America. And for me, whenever there is a legend or a story that is not simply localized, when it comes on a global scale, there is truth there. And the truth is that these cultures all have legends and stories about crystal skulls and beliefs about crystal skulls. And just a couple of things here. So this is an Arizona Navajo spiritual leader, a tribal chief called Leon Socotero, talking about crystal skulls. Only the very holiest of holy ones knows where the skulls are. The skull cannot be brought out from its hiding place deep in the mountains. Only the shaman who looks after the skull knows where it is. Now, what's interesting about many of these quotes is that they tie in so closely with things that I have been given to put in my books, okay? In the first book, Lost Legacy, there is a skull that is taken to the mountains of southwest Arizona and hidden underground. And in book 2, they go hunting for it, because the stories have a very modern story through of a lady called Gemma who is contacted by the skulls and is drawn into their web, and that's a contemporary story. And she gets pulled into this. So she goes hunting for this skull with a maverick archaeologist, because we all know what the mainstream archaeology idea is of when you talk about crystal skulls. Okay? And Professor Temple talked about the scientific community, mainstream kind of scientific community. Archaeologists are exactly the same. And they don't find it. There's various things happen, but, you know, put a spoiler out there for you all. They don't find it. And then this second quote comes from a Cherokee medicine man called Harley Swiftdeer. The skulls were kept inside a pyramid in a formation of tremendous power known as the Ark. 12 skulls, one from each of the sacred planets, in a circle, and the largest, that's the 13th, placed in the center. This one represents the collective consciousness of all the worlds. The Mayan legend, there's a Mayan legend, and the Mayans and the Native Americans also have the belief that the skulls were brought to Earth by aliens. Okay, that runs through a lot of this. So the Mayan legend says, after the great flood that destroyed Atlantis, the survivors wished to preserve their wisdom, and the skulls were sent to the place of their birth until they are needed. They will unite to avert the catastrophe man will wreak on the planet. And another Native American legend says, the 13 crystal skulls contain information on the origins and destiny of humankind. One day, at a time of great need, they will be rediscovered and brought together. So there are a lot of similarities throughout different cultures as to the existence, the origins, and the purposes of the skulls. So, having given you that, what do I think about the crystal skulls? What have I learned from working with the crystal skulls? Because I've been working with them now for 11 years in various ways. Initially, there was that very, very strong visual element of the meditations. I did, for a short while, actually do the verbal channeling. So this friend Akhtar is a very, very powerful skull. And in fact, when I got him, his previous keeper said to me, don't let him bully you. Yeah, he is a bit like that. So I was channeling Akhtar. So what is my understanding of what the crystal skulls are, why they're here, and what they mean for us in the future? My own experience, and I believe this goes for every crystal skull on the planet, is that they are transmitter-receivers. Okay? I know that my two big blacks, I've got another obsidian one called Sirius Ra. They are both linked to star beings of light. So they act as transmitter receivers, but they also hold part of the consciousness of those beings. And this is how we communicate with the star beings. And if you bear in mind that it was the star beings of light, those ancient space brothers and sisters that brought the skulls to Earth in the first place, it makes a lot of sense that they are linked to that. I believe every crystal skull that is the case, regardless of whether the people working with the skulls and guardians of the skulls actually recognize that or not. And it doesn't matter if they don't. You know, that's not essential. But the energy of those star beings of light coming through is what is transformative. They're here for so many different purposes, so many different purposes. The skulls have come through to me. They've changed my life completely. Okay, I've gone from not thinking I could write fiction to writing fiction, focusing on the skulls, focusing on writing the books. going in a completely different direction to where I thought I was going to be going 10 years ago, 11 years ago, that's for sure. So they're powerfully transformative. As I say, they can bring information through for whatever purpose. And I certainly know from speaking to people who work with crystal skulls that they bring through almost requests. Please do this to help your planet. Please take this action. Please undertake this project. And I'm not going to go into details with that, but certainly in the last 12 months, a very close friend of mine has been really thrown into something completely new and different, and very, very powerfully transformative through that. They can be healers, whether that's for a personal level, because let's face it, as within, so without, we have to heal ourselves. Professor Temple was saying we have to make the changes in here before anything can happen out there. So whether that's on a personal level, or whether that's on an Earth level, a planetary level, a lot of the crystal skulls are agents for, they assist with the work in opening up portals and stargates to allow the light through, the increased light vibrations. They just can bring peace, okay? And it's really interesting to me, in just the same way that I went from, no, to, yeah. I mean, this guy sat on my bedroom cupboard, on my bedside table for 6 years. I mean, if you'd have told me that it was going to do that 11 years ago, I'd have thought you were mad. He sat literally, it was the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes. And the people who have come to me, who've come to talks like this, not really had anything to do with crystal skulls, or not wanted to have anything to do with crystal skulls like me, and have gone away, and I've heard from them 2 weeks later. Look what I found. I've got 2 now, and that's the other thing. You can never just have one, okay? They multiply. I got my first crystal skull not until about September 2012, and I thought, well, 1 is all I need. You know, that's all I'm going to have. I'll just have the 1. I've got 8, okay? So they do multiply. Let me have a quick look and see. I'm sure that there's some other reason that they're here that I have not actually. So yes, they bring us help and guidance as well. You know, the amount of times when I've been at a point where I think I really don't know what to do, and I've tuned into my crystal skull, or one of my crystal skulls, depending on which one feels right, and have brought me through they don't always tell me what to do, but they show me which direction to look in to find out what to do. Okay? And now I am going back to my crib notes, just for a minute. So I've done that. So, a lot of we've already seen that the ancient legends tell us that they will come to us in a time of great need. That's the information that I have had as well, okay? That they are here to help us. We are moving into a new way of being, and it's going to be messy. And they will help us to negotiate that, to navigate through it as painlessly as possible. And I've actually got a channeling here from Akhtar that I did a few nights ago that I'm going to read you at the end of this talk. So, excuse me a minute. If you look around, I mean, I've touched on this earlier on, crystal skulls are everywhere. Okay? As I've mentioned, you know, when I was in the wholesalers 10, 12, 15 years ago, there were very few. Now they're everywhere. And it doesn't matter whether they're the ancient skulls, like Einstein or the Mitchell-Hedges skull. It doesn't matter whether they're a few hundred years. It doesn't matter if they're brand new and churned out in their tens of thousands by a factory in China or Brazil. Okay? They each have the power to connect with you and with the star beings and bring in whatever it is that you need to move forward in your evolution. There is no doubt in my mind that they choose you. You do not choose them. Okay, if you're looking for a crystal skull, you will know it when you find it, but you haven't chosen it. They will seek you out because the star beings that come through those crystal skulls know exactly who they are looking for. And one of the phenomenon that I have noticed in the past few years is that people will come up to me and say, crystal skulls, it's weird. They've started coming into my life and I don't understand it. And I think, okay, yeah, they might have started coming into your life. Just, give it a little while. They will be more than just starting to come into your life. If they are showing up in any way at all, they are trying to connect with you, and at some point they will. You will suddenly think, I must go and get myself a crystal skull, or I must read up about crystal skulls. Why are they doing that? Because the 13 original crystal skulls want to come back. They want to help us at this time. But as I've already said, if you can imagine what would happen at the moment, it would be carnage. And they have already said they will not return if they are going to make the situation worse. But more people that open up to the crystal skulls, that feel the energy of the crystal skulls, that make that heart connection, and there is a heart connection with the crystal skulls, the sooner we will get to that tipping point where people will be ready to welcome them and come back. So, I don't know how long we've got, Maria.
15 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to just read this channeling from Akhtar, and then I'll take any if anybody's got any questions, okay? So I said to Akhtar, can you give me a positive message for the people I'm going to, at the presentation on Saturday? And this is what he gave to me. It may feel that the world is crashing down around you, that the situation is beyond remedy, and that it is all gone too far to be stopped. All is true, but not in the way you believe. The world is crashing down in so many ways, and all of them necessary. For the situation that is beyond remedy, that cannot be stopped, is not, as it appears, the devastation of your world. It is rather the shift in paradigm, the leap upwards in frequency that has for so long been foretold. That shift has begun, is continuing, and cannot be stopped. Rejoice in this, for out of the ruins of what was, the new will be born. It will not be an easy transition. It cannot be, for rebirth is always preceded by death. What is must be torn down to make room for what will be to arise. Think of the wildfires that often ravage your world. They destroy, and yet at the same time they clear away the old, the diseased. From their ashes, new vibrant green shoots grow. It is always so. The light is here. The light of the future shines ever more brightly. You may not yet notice this if your attention is on the shadows. For do not the shadows darken and sharpen as the sunlight grows, until the point when the sun overcomes them, when it is directly overhead, and the shadows shrink and vanish. So it is here. The light shines ever more brightly. The contrast with the shadows, the darkness, strengthens. But as with the sunlight, there will come a point when they can no longer hold their ground. Do not make the mistake of thinking that this will be an easy victory. Those who resist, who oppose and fear the growing light, will not give in willingly. They dare not. Their existence and the meaning of their existence, control, power, greed, is at stake. Like a wounded animal, they will fight ever more ferociously. Yet they will not win. They cannot. The light has come, and the outcome is no longer in question. Yes, there will be difficult days ahead for the people of Earth, yet do not be filled with despair or fear or hopelessness, for we are with you. We will guide you and ease your transit through these times, if you will permit it. For although we wish to stand with you and help you, we can only do so with your permission. Open your hearts and minds, men and women of Earth, children of the stars, and hear us. We are here, and you are loved. So, I was going to go on a little bit more, 10 minutes. But basically, I've got the nudge that I've actually given you enough this afternoon. So if anybody's got any questions, please shout away. If not, I'll go and have a cup of tea.
Are all the skulls made out of the ones that we don't know about or that are hidden? Are they all made out of the same material, or are they like obsidian or selenite or?
The information I've been given is that they are all very different.
Okay.
And that comes through in my books. So we've got a black obsidian, a blue obsidian, a lapis, amethyst. They're all very different because each of the crystals itself, or each of the crystal structures, brings its own essence and energy specifically to the skull. And those, whatever they're formed of, whether it's amethyst or obsidian or whatever, it also reflects the strengths of the races that created them. Okay?
And the 13th one, do you know what that is?
We can. Do I tell you? Is it a spoiler?
Well, just
Yes, I know. I don't know what all of them are because some of them I haven't actually met yet. But I know what the 13th one is. Spoiler.
Yeah.
What the heck? It's a dark amethyst, which makes sense to me. It fits in very well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, it's all got very quiet.
My understanding is they're information stores. Is that correct?
I believe that some of them are, yes. It's particularly the quartz, the clear quartz ones.
Yeah.
So if you think of the properties of quartz and how much information can be stored on a tiny quartz crystal in a computer or something, there is a very strong belief that some of them, particularly perhaps the ancient ones, so perhaps Atlantean ones, have got that within them, yes. And that feels right to me. They all have different purposes, and it would make sense that some of them would have information. Now, accessing it is a different matter. And we don't access through here. We can access through here. We have to open our hearts as well as our minds to them. But this is the first point of a contact, is to open our hearts to them. And then to use our other senses, because there is so much information out there about crystal skulls. Some of it is accurate, some of it's a load of old baloney. How do you tell the difference? You can't, not logically, not using your brain. You have to go into those other abilities we have, our hearts, our souls, our psychic abilities, our intuition. That's the only way that we can actually decipher what's what. Yes?
You said that they're waiting to present themselves again. Do you think they're active, even in the waiting? Are they active? Maybe
I believe they are.
to us on other dimensions or through energies?
I believe they are. I think that is part of the reason why there are so many other skulls coming in. It is the influence of the original coming through, and although they are not as powerful as when they come together, what they've told me is called the gathering, whenever and wherever that might be. I've got some ideas. I do believe that they're having an influence already, yes.
You said that you worked with Atlantis.
Yeah.
I've heard that a lot of people that were alive in Atlantis are incarnate at the moment. or whatever's to come in the future?
Literally is escapees, actually. Yeah. I don't know, is the answer. My sense is, my feeling is, and again I have to work intuitively with this, that as things start moving faster, people who were in Atlantis and escaped will start awakening to that fact and will start using their knowledge, their remembering. It's always remembering. So I think that's the case, that when we start opening up and more people start opening up, more and more people will be remembering back then, and that will sort of accelerate everything. Yes. Okay.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Thank you, everybody. Marvellous. Thank you.